Anyone need more time? You guys ready to go?
Ready to go.
All right. All right, welcome everyone. This is State of Florida versus Sheila Keen Warren, case number 2017 CF 8732. For those in Zoom land, I'm going to do my best to keep admitting y'all and trying to make sure everything's muted so it's not interfering with the activity report today. So bear with me within that regard. Why don't I have everyone introduce themselves for the state?
Good morning, Your Honor. Reed Scott, Assistant State Attorney for the House State of Florida.
Good morning, Your Honor. Mr. Morales, Wellington, State of Florida.
Good morning, Your Honor.
The Caige here. Good morning, Ms. Keen Warren. Welcome everybody. So it's the defense motion to set conditions of retrial release. I want to thank both sides for sending me their submissions. I reviewed the submissions, memorandums, as well as all the documents that are presented. I'm hoping that, and I know we spoke last time we spoke, I'm hoping that you all can agree upon the smooth processing and admission of these documents. You all work that stuff out.
Yes, sir. I've spoken with Mr. Rosenfeld with the defense. I believe we agreed to stipulate to most, if not all, the documents. And the state has prepared a streamlined version given the lengthy briefs submitted by both sides.
Right. Mr. Rosenfeld?
Yes, sir. There'll be stipulations, no exhibits.
Great, that'll be helpful. So, okay, and let's talk about a little preview of what I'm going to be looking at today. Mr. Scott, I sent an email to me yesterday that there would be one witness today. Is that right?
Yes, sir, Judge. The state originally contemplated calling a few more witnesses. However, again, given the nature of the briefs filed by both sides and evidence stipulated, the state is going to be calling one witness, Detective Caige McCan. We do have approximately 30 exhibits that we will place on the record in the form of sworn statements, affidavits, other photographs, things like that.
Most of which I already have.
Yes, sir. I do have extra copies that are marked with evidence tags for the purpose of the first, but I believe you reviewed almost all of the state's evidence in its entirety based on prior briefs.
All right. Mr. Rosenfeld, anything else?
There will be some additional exhibits, nothing substantial or nothing. You've reviewed most of the transcripts. And we'll be walking through the facts of the case through the state's one witness. We'll have one brief witness this afternoon.
Okay.
And hopefully we can wrap up.
Because I reviewed your own submissions that are coming in as evidence. Right? So, is there anything new that I'll be hearing?
Very briefly from the state, I believe that there will be some testimony from Caige McCan on a couple of points that were not previously briefed that sort of came up in our preparation, but I would say that Your Honor has reviewed 90% or 95% of the state's presentation already.
Mr. Rosenfeld?
I think today a lot of what we intend on accomplishing is rebutting many of the allegations made by the state in their response brief. On top of that, despite the somewhat lengthiness of the motion to set bond, that was still the cliff notes of what we're going to give you today.
All right, but boy, are you going to be, you have one witness that's going to come in later? That's about.
Our one witness is going to be very brief.
Who is that?
It is Ms. Keen Warren's son.
Okay.
And that's more for establishing ties to the community. In terms of substantive witnesses and getting substantive evidence out, it's all going to be through that big thing.
Okay.
And Your Honor, just so the court's aware, when I contemplated my 2-hour time frame, I sort of contemplated that with cross-examination. I plan on doing an overview outline with Detective McCan, moving evidence in, and trying to be finished in 60 minutes.
All right.
So we're going to take a little bit longer than that. But.
Okay. I don't need to hear any opening comments unless you feel compelled to do that. Unless it's going to add anything to what you've all written.
State waives opening will rely on my written response.
Mr. Rosen?
Same with the bench.
Okay. All right, then you may proceed, Mr. Scott.
Thank you. This time, the state will call Detective Caige McCan.
Sir, from the gift that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Good morning, Detective McCan. I know it's difficult through these masks, but if you just speak up as loud as you can. And I think the microphone does move a little bit. Hold that closer to you. And just take a moment first to introduce yourself, support, spell your full name for the record.
Name is Detective Caige McCan, Caige, MCCANN.
And Detective McCan, what do you do for a living?
I'm a detective with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
And what division?
I'm currently assigned to the Violent Crimes Division,
And specifically within the Violent Crimes Division?
Cold Case Unit.
You could just briefly tell us what the cold case unit is and what your duties and responsibilities.
Cold Case Unit, we basically work missing persons, death investigations, assist other agencies, but our primary duties are to work cold cases, unsolved homicides.
Right, and just again, give us a thumbnail sketch of how a cold case would work from the cold case unit perspective. In other words, what are you looking at, what are you reviewing, and trying to see which one you which one you take forward.
We typically start by reviewing police reports, or try to obtain the original case file from the detectives. Look at the original police reports, medical examiner reports, evidence, property receipts, photographs.
Is it a common practice for you to take items of evidence that may have been worked previously, or a new area of technology has evolved since the case, and have those items either retested or re-examined or even looked at with fresh perspective?
Yes.
Are you always able to advance cases forward as part of the cold case unit?
No, not all cases.
Right, so is it sort of like the luck of the draw? Some cases you can move forward and some you cannot?
Correct.
How long have you been with the cold case unit?
I've been with the Sheriff's Office. I'm on my 29th year. I've been specifically assigned to cold case unit for 19 years.
Specifically with respect to murder cases, are there any statute of limitations in the state of Florida on homicides?
No.
So are you always able to go back and potentially review old cases, old evidence on homicide and determine if there's sufficient evidence to move forward?
Yes, because there's no statute of limitations, the cases are never closed.
Did you become involved in the case of investigation of the death of Marlene Warren as part of the review of the cold case?
Yes.
And how did you become involved in that case, just initially on re-review of the evidence?
Basically, I think it was in 2012 that we started reviewing, we wanted to review all the unsolved homicides. And then we also were awarded a grant. We've been awarded several grants. But in doing that, we had a volunteer, formal federal magistrate, Ann Bitunik was in our office volunteering, and she had actually pulled this case. And so she began reviewing the case. Once she got to a point where she thought that it was a solvable case, she contacted me, and I think it was in May of 2013 I became involved.
How did you begin your review?
Just like I said, before, I pulled the case file, I pulled all the police reports, I met with the detectives who originally worked the case, Detective Williams. I reviewed statements, obtained photographs, inventory of the evidence, got expert reports.
And there are a large number of exhibits that we're going to move into evidence today. You and I previously discussed the exhibits that we will discuss today.
Yes.
And are all the exhibits that we discussed today something that you reviewed and considered in your determination to charge this case?
Yes.
All right. So if you could just tell the court briefly what occurred specifically surrounding the death of Marlene Warren at the airport.
On May 26, 1990, it was around 10:50 in the morning, or 10:45 in the morning. Marlene Warren was at her residence, which is located in Wellington, in the Aero Club. Also present was her son, Joey Aarons, and several of his friends. They just got done having breakfast. They noticed somebody at the front door. Marlene went and answered the front door, and there was a clown standing at the front door. Someone dressed as a clown standing at the front door with a flower basket and 2 balloons. Witnesses heard Marlene say, "Well, you know," or "That's nice," and at the time the clown handed her the flowers and the balloons, the clown shot Marlene Warren 1 time in the face, then calmly turned around and walked away and got into a Chrysler LeBaron, a white newer model Chrysler LeBaron, and drove away.
And I want to come back to just some of those statements in a second. Did you investigate Marlene Warren's background in order to learn about who she was, the person who she married to, who her family was?
Yes.
Okay, what did you learn through your investigative work?
Marlene Warren, she was 40 years old at the time. She had 2 sons, Joey, who was president at the time, and then a son who had passed away a couple years prior. She was married to Michael Warren. They've been married for about 20 years. Everyone described her as just being sweet, nice, had no enemies.
Now, I don't know whether I asked you, but the Era Club, that's in Wellington, Florida?
Yes.
In Palm Beach County?
Yes.
Did you also, and who was Michael Warren? Did you investigate who he was at that time?
Yes. Michael Warren and Marlene Warren owned several duplexes, and Marlene Warren basically took care of the duplexes, and they also owned a business called Bargain Motors. That was primarily run by Mike Warren, and they sold and rented cars. Michael Warren, I believe he was 37 years old at the time. People described him as a hard worker, but like a ladies' man.
And did you also take time to investigate and learn about the defendant in this case, Ms. Sheila Keen?
Yes.
All right. And I just pointed in the direction. You see a person who you come to know, Sheila Keen Warren, present in the courtroom?
Yes.
And although it's difficult, we're all wearing these masks because of the pandemic, but can you just tell me where she's seated, about, and what she's wearing?
She's seated in the middle. She has a long hair. She has a gray sweatshirt on with the blue over top.
Sitting next to the witness?
Yes.
Let the record reflect the witness identified the defendant as Sheila Keen Warren.
Yes.
Based on your investigation of Ms. Warren back then, how was she sort of described by the people that had worked with her?
She was 26 years old, I believe, at the time. She was started to be 5'8", 125, 125 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes and long brown hair. She lived at 4759 Sable Pine Way, which was in the area of, I think, community or in like villages. She was an independent contractor who repossessed vehicles for Bargain Motors and other companies.
Okay. And how was she described, I guess, either physically, or was she, sort of a more feminine-like? Was she described as sort of a hard worker, a tough guy? Like how do people that know her, that at least the statements that you read describe her?
Being very tough. She was definitely known as being very tough because she repossessed vehicles at all hours. They also describe her as having like male mannerisms.
Okay. Just some witnesses and some of the statements that you, in the four statements you referenced, describe her as also been known to have a gun.
Yes.
Now you stated that there were a number of witnesses present at the residence at the time that Ms. Warren was shot and killed, correct?
Yes.
And I'll just ask you, in the list form, did that include, as you said, Mr. Joey Aarons, Ms. Jean Pratt, Mr. Wendell Pratt, and Ms. Mindy Perez?
Yes.
And if you had the opportunity to review statements, sworn statements taken from all four of these individuals?
Yes.
And were there several sworn statements taken from these individuals, specifically occurring in 1990, just after the homicide, as well as 1991?
Yes.
I believe by stipulation, Your Honor, this time, Your Honor, having previously reviewed all said statements, state move into evidence, states 1 through 8, I can delineate. States 1, stated by Joey Aarons from 1990. States 2, stated by Joey Aarons, 1991.
Just go like from about 50 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour.
I apologize. I'll slow down. States 2, stated by Joey Aarons from 1991. States 3, stated by Jean Pratt, taken in 1990. States 4, stated by Jean Pratt, 1991. States 5, statement of Wendell Pratt, taken in 1990. States 6, statement of window crack taken in 1991. State 7, statement of Mindy Perez taken in 1990. And states 8, statement of Mindy Perez taken in 1991.
Committee without objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
Detective McCan, those are all sworn statements that you reviewed?
Yes.
And you didn't take those statements, correct?
No, I didn't.
Is it common practice, again, like you told us, to review statements taken by other officers on full case reviews?
Yes.
If you could tell us, you told us in general the facts of the case, but in your review of the sworn statements, were the 4 individuals overall consistent on the observations they made the morning of the murder?
Yes, they were consistent with certain things, yes.
Okay. What were the consistent points that all 4 individuals seem to agree upon that are outlined in their sworn statements?
They all agree that they were present when the victim was shot, that a clown had, or first dressed as a clown, had knocked on the front, or tried to ring the doorbell and then knocked on the front door, that Marlene Warren had answered the door and that they heard a gunshot. Marlene Warren fell to the ground. That Michael Warren was not present at the time. That the clown's, the description of the clown's face was covered either with white paint or a mask. That the clown outfit, that the clown had a wig on. I think some described it as orange or reddish or multicolored. That the clown calmly walked away, got into a newer model white LeBaron, which was parked in the driveway, got into the driver's side of the vehicle. The vehicle had no tag on it. And the clown outfit was baggy. But the description of the clown outfit varied.
That's why I asked you, were there some inconsistencies within the 4 witnesses about, I guess, a specific color scheme or design scheme of the clown outfit itself?
Yes, the color scheme and the style of the clown costume varied.
So that was some inconsistencies in between those witnesses? Were any of the witnesses able in either?
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear her.
Yes.
Oh,
Did any of the 4 witnesses on the scene, were they able to make a positive identification of the person who they saw shoot Marlene Warren?
No.
Did you also have an opportunity to, after reviewing the statements of the individuals that have been provided and placed into evidence, review some crime scene photographs as well as autopsy photographs of Marlene Warren?
Yes.
Defense didn't do it, Your Honor.
Having previously shown defense states 9 and 10, the state of movement evidence states 9 and 10.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
9, 10 remain in state.
And showing just briefly the witness states 9, did you observe photographs of the interior of the scene of the crime?
Yes.
All right. And what were the consistencies within the exhibited in the photographs based on what the witnesses told them?
That they described there was a flower basket and the 2 balloons.
Of those present in the photograph?
Yes.
And the actual scene of the crime, did it take place, or does it appear to take place in the location outlined by the witnesses?
Yes, right at the front door of the residence.
And how could you tell that a shooting had taken place?
There was blood on the ground.
Did you also have an opportunity to review all of the autopsy photos, but specifically the head photo of Ms. Warren?
Yes.
Can we see that in State's 10?
Yes.
Specifically with respect to the evidence that can be seen in that photograph, what were you able to corroborate with what the victim told you? I'm sorry, the witnesses told you.
According to the medical examiner's report, she sustained a single close-range gunshot to the face, actually her upper lip. There was gunpowder residue as well as stippling around the wound, which would mean that it was a close range.
And is that stippling or powder tattooing observable in the photograph?
Yes.
Did you note in any report or any statements that anybody saw, collected, or photographed an empty shell casing?
No, there was none located.
All of the witnesses, I believe you said, stated that the clown calmly walked away after the shooting and got into a white Chrysler LeBaron.
Yes, that was description.
And during the pendency of your investigation of this crime, did you learn that a white Chrysler newer model LeBaron had been located that later became relevant based on things that were located inside?
Yes.
If you could just tell the court about that?
The Chrysler LeBaron was located at 1135 Royal Palm Beach Boulevard in Royal Palm Beach, Florida, at the Winn-Dixie Shopping Plaza in the parking lot. That was located 4 days after the homicide. Detectives at that time ran the VIN number and found out that the vehicle was registered to Payless Rent-A-Car and that it had been reported stolen.
All right. So first, let me ask you, showing defense. Without objection, have previously shown defense to the state's possible evidence.
Admitted.
Ms. McCan, sorry, Second McCan, please 11 show photographs of the outside of the white Chrysler LeBaron as located in the Winn-Dixie parking lot, as well as a photograph of the inside of the vehicle.
Yes.
No objection, right?
No objection.
Who reported that vehicle stolen originally?
Vincent Restevio and his wife, I guess I believe they were down from New York. They rented the vehicle from Payless Rent-A-Car. They were leaving a little bit early and they decided to return the car after hours. At that time, they called whom they thought was Payless after looking at an ad in the yellow pages. It was a misleading ad that had the word Payless, but it was for Bargain Motors. They called the number and spoke to Don Carter and advised that they wanted to return the vehicle.
Did you corroborate what the Restevos had reported in their statements with the statements of both Donald and Ronald Carter as well as Susan Martin from Bargain Motors?
Yes.
And what did the three of them corroborate? How did they corroborate what the Restevos had said?
Don Carter admitted that he took the phone call from the Restevos, advising they wanted to return the car. He was told to, he told them to leave the car outside Payless and to leave the keys above the visor.
Right. Was this also confirmed by, I believe, Mr. Don Carter? I'm sorry, who took the phone call?
Don Carter took the phone call,
Okay.
but it was also heard by Ron Carter and Suzanne Martin, I believe, was working at the time.
And who were Don and Ron Carter?
They're twins, I believe, but they're cousins of Mike Warren, and they worked there for Mike Warren.
They
Bargain Motors.
They work at Bargain Motors?
Yes.
And what about Susan Martin?
I believe she was the bookkeeper, or she worked only on, I think she at that time only worked on Saturdays, but she had been an employee there for a while.
Was there a statement, an affidavit made by Ms. Debbie Z of Payless Motors?
Yes.
Okay, who was Debbie Z?
She was, her family owned Payless Rent-A-Car, and she was the one who signed the affidavit providing the vehicle was stolen, as well as, I believe, signed a consent for detectives to search the vehicle.
And did she corroborate that the vehicle located at the Winn-Dixie parking lot was in fact a car of Payless?
Yes.
Were there some features on the outside of the vehicle that Ms. Debbie Z said was consistent with a vehicle that would have been belonging to Payless at the time?
Yes, I had spoken to her, and she said that there was, they usually have a sticker on the back of the vehicle, and I showed her a photograph, and she said that that is where the sticker would have been located, however, it was no longer there.
And the detectives at the time, I believe, Dwayne Kelly and Bill Williams, did they confirm through a VIN number and a tag registration that that was in fact a car that belonged to Payless?
Yes.
With respect to the LeBaron after it was dropped off by the Restevos, in the review of statements by Ron Carter, and Claude Poitras, did you learn what happened to that vehicle after the Restevos left?
Yes, Claude Poitras had stated that Michael Warren had asked him to drive him to pick up a vehicle or drive him to a location. So Michael Warren got into the vehicle along with Sheila Keen and drove to Payless. At that time, Michael Warren got out of the vehicle, got into the Chrysler LeBaron that was left by the Restevos, and Claude met Mike, and Claude and Sheila met Mike at a different location about a mile away, at which time Sheila Keen got into the vehicle with Michael Warren.
And now that's Claude's version of how the theft took place? Did Ron and Don Carter give a slightly different version of the theft of the LeBaron?
Yes.
Okay, now what did Ron and Don say?
Don Carter said, he gave two statements. He basically stated that he took the phone, he admitted he took the phone call from the Restevos and told them to leave the vehicle. He claims that the vehicle was left outside of Barger Motors, and that Mike Warren and Sheila Keen had got into the vehicle, and that he took a different vehicle, and they all went to dinner and later that evening.
Okay, and what about Mr. Ron?
Can you say that again?
Don Carter advised that he got into a separate vehicle while Michael Warren and Sheila Keen got into the white Chrysler LeBaron, that the Restevos left outside of their gate. At that time, they met up, we went to dinner somewhere, and then I believe that they parked the vehicle at a lot that Sheila Keen usually used to store repo vehicles.
And that was Don Carter's version of how the theft took place?
Yes.
What about Ron Carter? Did he have a version of how the theft took place?
He basically just confirmed, from what I recall, he confirmed that Michael Warren, that Don Carter, his brother, had taken the phone call, and that he told the woman to leave the keys on the windshield wipers, and shortly after, Mike and Sheila Keen had left the office.
Did the individuals who discussed the theft of the LeBaron confirm that the photograph that's admitted in evidence of the LeBaron in the Winn-Dixie parking lot was in fact the LeBaron that they had taken?
Yes.
And although there were slight variances in how the theft actually took place, did Mr. Poitras and Mr. Ron Carter and Don Carter all confirm and corroborate that the LeBaron had in fact been taken, and that Michael Warren and Sheila Keen had taken part in that theft and been inside that vehicle?
Yes.
When the LeBaron was located in the Winn-Dixie parking lot, did it have a license tag affixed to the back?
Yes, it should.
Okay. The license tag that was affixed to the back of the vehicle, was it the assigned tag to that vehicle?
No.
Was the assigned tag of that vehicle ever located?
Yes.
And where was it located?
I believe it was located on another vehicle that was rented from a separate individual,
Okay. A separate
separate company.
loan company?
Yes.
Okay. Going back to the Winn-Dixie parking lot, did you review the reports of Detective Lou Sessa, Detective Dwayne Kelly, Detective Bill Williams, Sergeant Michael Free, as to their observations of the inside of the vehicle when they arrived at the Winn-Dixie?
Yes.
And what did those detectives and case sergeants observe on scene inside of that LeBaron?
They reported observing what appeared to be synthetic orange fibers as well as long brown strands of human hair inside the vehicle.
Was that LeBaron transported to the Long Beach County Sheriff's Office and eventually searched and evidence collected by Sergeant Michael Free and with the assistance of a fingerprint tech CSI, Mr. J. Mullins?
Yes.
And those two gentlemen, did they collect said items of evidence from the LeBaron?
Yes.
What items and what did those items of evidence include?
They did include numerous fibers and hairs that reflected they vacuumed the interior of the vehicle.
Did they also use a laser to identify additional strands of hair or fibers?
Yes.
Was this evidence collected and packaged with a corresponding case number as well as the victim's name and stored at a Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office facility?
Yes.
All this took place, the collection of the evidence back in what year?
1990.
Were you with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office in 1990?
No.
Okay. What is your knowledge based on your training experience and research as to what type of forensic analyses that were being performed in 1990?
I believe at that time, we were just doing blood typing.
Okay. DNA analysis was not, certainly not in its current evolutionary state, but was it even in existence at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office at the time?
Correct.
You're saying that back in 1990, there was no DNA was used by the sheriff's office?
Correct. It was blood typing. They didn't have, where they had markers, genetic markers. I believe that started in 1993, if I'm not mistaken. And then 1995 is when they started with 10 genetic markers and progressing.
You said 1993. Do you recall how many genetic markers they tried to examine in 1993?
I believe one, but I'm not 100% sure.
And it wasn't until the early 2000s when they were able to look at 16 genetic markers?
Yes, I believe it was around 2001.
Blood typing, just so that we're clear, what information were they able to garner or gather from an examination of blood typing?
It's like if you were O positive or what blood type you were.
And that analysis, was that specific to, I mean, essentially, would there have to be some sort of blood, or do you know if they even do blood typing on a hair or human hair?
I don't believe so. I believe only the FBI was doing like microscopic analysis at that time.
Was the FBI even doing, as far as you can tell, any DNA analysis on hair back in 1990?
Not that I'm aware of.
And you stated that the FBI was conducting microscopic analysis? And what information, based on your review of the case file, was able to be determined based on microscopic analysis? In other words, what were they looking at? Like, what type of comparisons did they
Well, they
make?
could do hair comparisons and comparisons such as the fibers inside the vehicle.
Were they able to definitively link a piece of human hair to a potential suspect's hair using only microscopic analysis?
No.
Were the results more either consistent with or inconsistent with? Okay. Now, because of over the course of your career, have you had the opportunity to work numerous cases in which DNA analysis was not available at the time of the crime, but later became available?
Yes.
So, with respect to any evidence collected that's later analyzed, where and how is that evidence stored and secured so that it can be later utilized for potential analysis?
Evidence is typically packaged, sealed, and then placed into our evidence section, which is a secured area.
And do the deputies, members of the public, assistant state attorneys have any unfettered access to that area?
No.
What about documentation system? How is evidence properly documented and cataloged so that it can be located and tracked?
We fill out a property receipt, and that's maintained in the evidence section. And then when you go to view evidence, you're supposed to sign the property receipt, indicating the date and time.
Was that done in this case?
Yes.
The evidence that you've located and marked for further processing, was it within the evidence section of Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
Was the evidence contained in proper bags with case numbers and identifying markers?
Yes.
Were there actually a number of different identifying markers, be it letters or numbers, that pieces of evidence corresponded to?
Yes.
You spoke to us about observations of the 4 witnesses inside the home, stating that the clown brought 2 balloons and a basket of flowers to the home.
Yes.
And I think you told us that those flowers and balloons are observable in photographs.
Yes.
Were those flowers and balloons also stored, kept, and cataloged in the evidence section of Long County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
Back in 1990, did you learn through review of the documents in this case of the investigation of multiple possible sources of those balloons and flowers?
Yes.
And if you could just briefly tell us about that.
Detectives contacted numerous places. They eventually found Publix, which was located at 2895 North Military Trail. I believe that's right there at Community and Military. And they found that the flower arrangement as well as 2 balloons were purchased at that location.
And is that in close proximity to this defendant's home where she was living at the time?
Yes, I believe it was like 0.6 of a mile.
Did you review the sworn statement of a Miss Regina Albero?
Yes.
And who was Miss Regina Albero back then?
She was an employee of Publix working in the floral department.
And based on your review of the sworn statement of Miss Regina Albero, what did she tell the detectives about her interaction with the person who purchased those items back in 1990?
Earlier in the day on May 26, 1990, which was the day of the homicide, she thought it was around 9:45 to 10:30. She saw a tall, skinny person whom she thought was a male, but actually thought it was a young boy, looking at the flower arrangements. She only saw the person had a slender face, and then she only saw the side view of the face and the back of the person. She recalled that the person had long brown hair and was wearing dark-colored gloves with fingers cut out, and had a painter's cap on. She noticed that the person was warmly dressed, which she thought was odd, wearing long-sleeve shirt and grayish vest. The person picked a Memorial Day basket out, and which consisted of red carnations and white mums, and also 2 balloons, which was one was a Snow White balloon theme, and the other one was a red balloon, and she thought it said, "You're the best."
Is that consistent with the items of evidence you located on scene?
Yes.
You said that she believed the red heart balloon said, "You're the best."
Yes.
Is that a little bit different than the balloon that was found on scene?
Yes. One on scene says, "You're the greatest."
Right. And you use the word mums, white mums. Do you mean white chrysanthemums?
Yes.
All right. Did the basket that was located on scene contain red carnations and white chrysanthemums?
Yes.
Is that consistent with what Ms. Albero told you she observed that day?
Yes.
And at the time, did Detective Dwayne Kelly meet with Mr. Ferentz, who was the manager of the Publix, and obtain a copy of that receipt that was that was generated at the time that the purchase was made?
Yes.
Did you review both those items in preparation for your investigation in this case?
Yes.
Okay. Having previously shown defense and previously submitted the report, statement of defense, states 12, statement of Regina Albero, and states 13, copy of the purchase receipt from the floral department of the Publix.
Any objection?
No objection.
Good.
Based on the printout of the receipt, approximately what time were the items purchased from Publix?
9:24 a.m. on May 26, 1990.
Back during the investigation, did the detective also attempt to locate the possible location of the purchase of any type of clown costume, makeup, or wig?
Yes.
Can you just tell us about that, please?
They contacted several costume shops, and one, Barbara from the Spotlight Studio, had called them back and said that 2 of her employees had sold a clown costume a couple of days prior to the murder to a female.
What were the names of those 2 workers?
At the time, Dinah Rosales, I believe, and Deborah Gill.
Okay. And did Ms. Rosales and Ms. Gill both give sworn statements?
Yes.
And did they also, at the time of their at the time they were initially spoken to, were they provided with a photo array and asked to take a look and see see if there's anybody they could identify.
Yes.
Okay, so let me just ask you first, in general, the consistency between the two ladies that's outlined in their statements, what did those Ms. Rosales and Ms. Lee, I'm sorry, Ms. Rosales and Ms. Alford state that they observed 2 days prior to the homicide when the individual came in?
They were working, it was around 6 o'clock p.m. because the store was closing. Right as it was closing, a young woman started knocking on the door saying that she needed something, that she'd be real quick. Dinah described her as being taller, thin, with long brown hair pulled back, wearing jeans and walked and looked like a man. Had no feminine curves and a flat bottom. She said that Deborah had helped her with the costume to purchase a clown costume, and she also purchased an orange wig. Dinah said that she helped her at the makeup counter, and that the female told her that she needed extra white makeup to completely cover her face. She purchased an extra tube of white face paint, and she also believes she told her a clown nose as well.
Did either Ms. Rosales or Ms. Small Alford, I guess her name is now Deborah Alford, did either of them recall selling clown shoes to the lady?
No.
And without objection, the state would states 14 and 15, Ms. Dinah Rosales' statements from 1991, as well as states 17, Ms. Rosales' deposition, I apologize, and states 19, the statement of Deborah Small. Any objection?
No objection.
All right, good. And if you have the opportunity to review what's marked this time as states 18 and states 20, the two photo lineups. States 18 given by Ms. Rosales, and states 20 by Ms. Deborah Small.
Yes.
Okay. First, with respect to Ms. Rosales, Ms. Rosales selected an individual and indicated as much by signing the back of the photograph with her signature, as well as placing a date of 5/27/1990 on it.
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity, and have you had an opportunity to not only review Ms. Rosales' statements, but also actually look at the actual photo array in evidence?
Yes.
Okay. And although it's difficult to see the pictures get flipped up, which individual did Ms. Rosales select out of the photo array?
Number 4.
And when you say number 4, you mean this person right here?
Yes.
The person with the circle around them?
Yes.
Okay. And who is the person that was located in number 4?
Sheila Keen.
Is that this defendant who sits here today?
Yes.
And is that the person who Ms. Rosales said came in and purchased a clown costume that day?
Yes.
Now, with respect to Ms. Deborah Small and Deborah Alford, have you had an opportunity to actually look at the photographic lineup that Ms. Alford reviewed?
Yes.
And did Ms. Alford select one or initial 2 photographs in this program?
2 photographs.
Right. Which 2 photographs did Ms. Alford initial?
Number 3 and number 6.
Right. And who is pictured in the 3 spot?
Sheila Keen.
Is that this defendant who sits here today you identified?
Yes.
With respect to the individual in number 6, and please send without objection, counsel?
Yes.
Correct, Ms.
Do you have any information on who the individual located in the number 6 spot was?
No.
The practice with respect to constructing a photo lineup, at least back then, how was it done?
I wasn't there at the time, but I believe, from what I understand, they just had a bunch of photographs of people, and then they would just randomly pick people who looked similar and place them in a lineup. That was before we had our Edicon system, which we could actually do it computer generated.
And the photographs that were sort of collected in this pile, were they verified as individuals that either had no connection to Palm Beach County or that it could be you verified were not involved in the case?
Some of the photographs have information on them, some of them don't. And unfortunately, that photograph did not have any information on it.
The photograph of the individual depicted in 6?
Picture number 6.
However, in your review of Ms. Small's statement from 1991, did she admit, although she initially selected 2 individuals, that she was more confident about one than the other?
Yes.
And the individual who I believe she said she was 75% sure about, was that Ms. Keen?
Yes, that was her. She initially picked Sheila Keen, and then said that the person in picture 6, their nose was kind of resembled as well.
And that, again, that's contained in the exhibits that have already been admitted?
Yes.
State movement evidence, please, without objection, state 16.
No objection.
What is state 16, if you can see from where you're seated? What is state 16?
Oh, what is it? I'm sorry. It's the receipt from Spotlight and Caige.
Does it have the date prior to the homicide written on top of the receipt?
I'd have to see the receipt. I'm sorry. I'm not- Yes, May 25th, 1990.
Do you recall Ms. Gill, Ms. Alford, explaining why it had the date just prior to the homicide on it and not the date it was actually purchased?
I believe it was late and they'd already cashed out the door, if I'm not mistaken.
That receipt, what does it show was sold to the individual identified as Ms. Keen in this case?
I believe it shows, I don't know the exact wording, I think it says suit, wig, clown white, clown kit, and clown nose.
Does it indicate that whether or not clown shoes were sold?
It does not list clown shoes.
Based on the information on that document, as well as the date and the statements given by Ms. Rosales and Alford, does that receipt corroborate what they told detectives back in 1990 and 1991?
Yes.
Did you have the opportunity to review sworn statements of Miss Catherine, at the time, Wooten, Charles Wooten, Susan Martin, and Suzanne Gold, in addition to Ron and Don Carter?
Yes.
Okay. I want to ask you specifically, did those individuals provide information in their sworn statements regarding an extramarital affair that was taking place prior to the homicide between this defendant and Michael Warren?
Yes.
Okay. If you could just in general tell us what information those individuals provided.
Catherine and Charles Wooten, they lived in the same apartment complex that Sheila Keen lived in. And they reported seeing Michael Warren over there numerous times and at all times during the day and night.
And this was, again, prior to the homicide?
Yes.
Okay. What about Ron and Don Carter?
Ron Carter says he saw them engaged in relations.
Oral sex?
Yes.
Okay.
And also saw them kissing and hugging and being affectionate. It was just common knowledge.
Okay. And what about Miss Martin and Miss at the time in school?
Suzanne Martin said that during April that she knew, like I said, it was common knowledge that they were heavily involved around April. She believed it started around April. Suzanne Budachek saw them kissing and believed she saw Sheila Keen performing oral sex on Michael Warren in the office.
And these were provided in sworn statements?
Yes.
Okay. Any objection? Council states no objection. Okay. For the record, no objection. Statement of bid. Statement of Ron Carter from 1990 is dated 21. And statement of Susan Martin from 1990 is dated 23.
All right, good.
As part of this investigation, did Detective Bill Springer meet with Mr. Carter, I believe in September 2017, just speak with them about this investigation?
I'm not sure if they met in person or if they spoke, but it would be documented as required.
Okay. And is that, the interaction, that documented as part of supplement number 57 in this case?
Yes.
Did you have a conversation with Mr. Springer about his interaction with Mr. Carter?
Yes.
And what does Mr. Springer relate to you that Mr. Carter told him, was able to confirm with him about the defendant and Mr. Warren from 1990?
Just in general, or about the relationship, or?
Yes, specifically about the relationship.
Okay. That he would often drive them to the, Sheila Keen and Michael Warren, drive them to the racetrack, and that they would have sex in the back of the car. Oral sex.
Now we're talking about the case, supplement 57.
Yes.
Take a move to admit states 22 without objection.
No objection.
Admitted. When you say that he testified to that, was that prior to the murder?
Back during the investigation, based on positive identifications of Ms. Rosales and Ms. Small, corroborating evidence by Ms. Alvaro, the extramarital affair that occurred between the defendant Michael Warren, the evidence of the LeBaron, as well as observations at the scene of the crime, was a search warrant authorized for both the apartment of the defendant as well as to get items of evidence from a person.
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall the detectives who were involved, or the individuals who were involved in the execution of those search warrants?
I believe it was Detective Kelly, Detective Williams, Sergeant Maestri, Sergeant Lucessa, and Byron Collins was the nurse.
And based on your review of the reports, was a hair sample as well as a blood sample collected from the defendant?
Yes.
Based on your review of the evidence in this case, are there the existence of blood and hair samples within the evidence of the Long Beach County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
And do they bear the case number as well as the name of the defendant, the date, as well as initials of individuals who were documented in the reports?
I believe so.
What about items of, or observations or items of evidence collected from the defendant's apartment?
They collected several items. I know they collected 3 black high-top sneakers with laces, T-shirts from her closet, miscellaneous hairs and fibers.
On those those black high-top sneakers, were colored fibers located that were submitted for analysis?
Yes, I believe they were looking on the shoes as well as the shirts.
And were some maroon fibers collected as well as what appeared to be orange fibers?
Yes.
Did you review and consider the reports of, the sworn reports of Detectives Dwayne Kelly and Lucessa as to their observations of colored fibers in the master bedroom of the apartment of the defendant from the search warrant?
Yes.
Okay, and what did Detective Kelly, Sergeant Sessa observe in that master bedroom?
Basically just that. They observed fibers, colored fibers in hair.
Did they describe those fibers as being consistent with clown wig or colored type fibers, synthetic?
I don't recall that specifically.
Okay. Were the colored fibers from the LeBaron as well as the fibers collected from the apartment of the defendant, as well as the brown hairs collected, the human hairs collected from the LeBaron, along with samples of the defendant's blood, the defendant's hair, and a wig purchased from the Spotlight costumers as a standard? Were all those items submitted to the FBI for comparison analysis?
Yes.
So I'll have to ask you specifically, have you had the opportunity to review FBI reports from analyst Joshua Friedman and analyst Randy Christian.
Yes.
And do those contain the results of the both the microscopic analysis as well as DNA analysis in this case?
Yes.
State movement evidence, stage 24, report by Joshua Freeman, and stage 25, report by Randy Christian.
No objection.
Admitted.
Okay, first with respect to microscopic analysis of the human hair found in Wellington with the hair of Ms. Keen Warren. If you could generally tell us what the results of those analyses were.
Specifically, 2 hairs were microscopically consistent with Sheila Keen.
Okay?
One hair has similarities and differences, and one hair, there was no conclusion could be reached.
Okay. Again, that's just a consistency based on a microscopic level of analysis, correct?
Yes.
In addition to the microscopic analysis, were several of those hairs passed on for, more specifically, DNA analysis?
Yes, DNA and mitochondrial.
Okay. And what were the results of the mitochondrial DNA analysis that's contained in the FBI report that has been submitted to evidence?
A partial mitochondrial DNA sequence was obtained. Sheila Keen cannot be excluded as being the source of that hair.
Is that the root portion of the hair, I believe, delineated as 39-1-1?
That would have been the actual hair, 39-2, because that was the mitochondrial.
Okay.
The root portion would have been the nuclear DNA.
Okay, so the mitochondrial, she cannot be excluded, correct?
Correct.
And have you had the opportunity to speak with Ms. Christian about the results in this case?
Yes.
And what is your understanding of the DNA results after having the opportunity to speak with Ms. Christian?
I don't understand.
I believe you stated the report states that she could not be excluded.
Correct.
What is the probability of the hair that was located in Wellington not belonging to this defendant?
I don't know if they gave a probability.
Well, the statistics would be included in the report, correct?
Yes, so are you referring to the table or the chart that was in the report?
Correct. I'm not asking for the actual number. Let me just ask the question this way. Would you agree that after speaking with Ms. Christian, that the statistical probability of someone other than the defendant contributing to the DNA from the hair would be exceptionally rare?
Yes, that one would be rare, I believe.
And with respect to the root portion, that's the root portion of hair 39-1. I believe the root portion was designated as 39-1-1. What were the results of the DNA analysis?
Sheila Keen was the source of one of the contributors from the root portion.
And was that a likelihood ratio analysis?
There was, yes.
So there was the potential of more than one profile there?
Yes.
But with respect to at least one of the profiles, Ms. Christian determined that the defendant is the source of that profile?
Yes, and I believe the likelihood ratio was 700 billion times more likely.
And with respect, I believe, to the other hair, you told us Ms. Keen could not be excluded as a contributor to the DNA profile in 39-2?
Yes.
And again, in the conversation with Ms. Christian, with the statistical probability of someone other than the defendant contributing to that DNA, that hair would be exceptionally rare?
Yes, it would be rare.
And just going back briefly to the comparison of the fibers.
Did we cover 39-1? That was
Yes, we did. We covered 39-1.
Oh, I'm sorry, that I got confused. I apologize. So 39-1 was the hair from the format, and that the mitochondrial sequence obtained was the same mitochondrial sequence of Sheila Keen, and that one was exceptionally rare.
Okay.
I apologize.
I think we got there.
Okay, I'm sorry. I messed up.
I want to ask you briefly about the comparison between the 13 yellow monochrome wig fibers from the LeBaron and as compared to the wig fibers obtained from the wig and spotlight costumers. What were the results of the FBI's analysis, specifically the Freeman's analysis of those two fibers?
The wig comparisons, he reported multiple monocrylic yellow-orange wig fibers compared to the wig purchased at the Spotlight, and that they had same microscopic characteristics and optical properties.
And did they also conclude that there was a likelihood that they derived from the same source?
Yes. Do you want the exact wording or?
Sure.
These fibers are consistent with originating from a source comprised of fibers that exhibit the same microscopic characteristics and optical properties as the fibers comprising of the wig.
So, although not as specific as DNA analysis, Mr. Freeman was able to determine that they were consistent with one another.
Yes.
And was that similar, did they have a similar conclusion with respect to maroon carpet fibers from the LeBaron compared to the maroon fibers found on the shoes located in this Keen's apartment?
Yes.
And again, what was the language in the report?
Multiple maroon fibers from Sheila Keen's shoes, the same microscopic characteristics and optical properties as fibers from the carpet sample from the LeBaron. The price from the LeBaron.
So there was consistency between the carpet in the LeBaron and the fibers from the Keen's apartment. There was similarity between the fibers in the LeBaron and the clown wig obtained from Spotlight customers. And there was definitive conclusive analysis that Ms. Keen had contributed DNA to hairs and roots of hairs in that LeBaron.
Correct.
Did you have an opportunity to review several statements given by the defendant to Detectives Williams and Kelly as part of the investigation?
Yes.
And I specifically asked you, did Ms. Keen deny being romantically involved with Mr. Warren?
Yes.
What did she say about that?
So that she knew that there was a rumor going around, but they were just friends.
And did she admit or deny ever having been previously inside a white Chrysler LeBaron or owning or driving a white Chrysler LeBaron?
She denied that.
And did she admit or deny owning or wearing a clown costume or ever having purchased a clown costume?
She denied having a clown costume or ever being, or purchasing one.
Did you also review the statement of Mr. Michael Warren?
Yes.
What did he say with respect specifically to his location at the period of time encompassing the homicide?
That morning he went to work at Bargain Motors, and around 11:30, I believe, he was en route to the racetrack with 2 other persons.
Was his location based on the statement able to be corroborated through other witness statements?
Yes.
And who corroborated the location of Mr. Warren that he was racing with?
The people in the car, John Bush, I think his name was John Bush, and Mr. Orton, check something.
What about Mr. Ronald Donald Carter? Did they provide statements as to where Mr. Warren said he was going that morning?
Yes.
And where was that?
The racetrack.
So that was all consistent?
Yes.
Subsequent to the murder of Marlene Warren, were you able to research the path of the relationship between this defendant and Michael Warren, where it went after the homicide?
Yes.
And if you could just briefly tell the court about their relationship after the homicide.
I believe it was 1993, they purchased a restaurant called the Purple Cow in Kingsport, Tennessee.
Okay.
Michael Warren subsequently went to prison, and I believe Sheila Keen moved up there, and then instead of being called Sheila, she was called Debbie, and everyone up there only knew her as Debbie. She ran the Purple Cow while he was in prison.
Okay.
I know they got married in August 20th, 2002 in Las Vegas, and they continued to stay together to this day.
At the time of her arrest, Were you present at Ashton, Virginia?
Yes.
And did Michael Warren and this defendant live together as husband and wife in a home in Ashton, Virginia?
Yes.
And were you able to do any research with respect to that home as to when they purchased it, how long they were living there?
They had a place in Kingsport, Tennessee as well. I don't know specifically what they, or when they moved to Virginia, but they had both of those residences. I believe her brother was living at the residence in Tennessee.
So during the Tennessee investigation, it was clear that this defendant, Michael Warren, had an intimate sexual relationship both before the murder of his wife and continued afterward until they ultimately were married and continued on until the time of her arrest in 2017.
Correct.
I thank you. Does anyone have further questions